I never thought there would come a day when my own son would feel ashamed of his mother. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had waited for it almost my whole life, the day I would watch my son, David, walk down the aisle with the woman he loves. As a single mother, I never dreamed of anything extravagant, but I had imagined this moment to be warm and complete, except reality turned out to be nothing like the dream. This morning, I woke up at 5 o'clock. Sunlight streamed through the large window of my small house in the suburbs of Savannah, Georgia. It is the home I have lived in for nearly 30 years, the place where I raised David after my husband, Richard, passed away from pancreatic cancer. I have kept everything just the way it was, the old photo frames, the lace curtains I sewed myself back when I worked as a village seamstress. Every corner of the house holds a memory. I walked past the old wooden cabinet by the stairs. On top of it sat a navy blue velvet box, carefully placed next to a black and white photograph of my mother. I opened the box. A pearl necklace shimmered in the soft light. My heart sank. "This necklace," I whispered, "is all that my mother left me." My mother sold her only wedding ring to buy me a business suit when I went to my very first job interview, after my father died. At the time, I had nothing but dreams and determination. She did not say much, just placed the little box in my hands and said, "Go, my dear, live for yourself." That necklace carried me through all those years, from a small-town girl to the owner of the biggest fashion retail chain on the outskirts of Georgia, once called by the local magazine the unofficial queen of Southern style. I held the necklace, ready to place it into a cream-colored gift box tied with a silver ribbon, a wedding gift for David. Not for Pauline. I did not think she would understand its meaning, but to me, it was a symbol of sacrifice, of love, of everything a mother could pass on to her child, not in money, but in heart. I was placing the box into my purse when the phone rang. It was David. "Hi, sweetheart," I said with a smile, still tying the ribbon on the gift box. "Mom." His voice was low, dry. "Before you come, I just wanted to bring up what we talked about yesterday." I froze. "What do you mean? I just want to ask you not to talk too much with the guests, especially about, the old days, or your work. Pauline is really stressed. You understand, right?" My heart ached. I tried to keep my voice steady. "You mean I should be a little more low-key? Is that it?" David sighed. "It is just that everything has to be perfect. That is what she wants. Just keep it light, okay, Mom?" I fell silent. Then I forced a laugh. "All right, I will be a proper Southern lady, just like I have always been." The call ended. I set the phone down on the table. For the first time that day, I felt cold. I drove along roads shaded by sweeping oak trees, the familiar white fences of Savannah fading in the rearview mirror. A light breeze slipped through the cracked window, carrying the scent of pine. But my heart was not light like the breeze. It felt heavy, like I was carrying a stone, a nameless feeling, as if I was about to enter a place where I no longer belonged. I remembered when David got his job in New York. I was the one who paid his tuition, bought the plane ticket, found him his first apartment. But ever since he met Pauline, everything changed. The calls became fewer. The conversations grew polite, distant. And then, once, I suggested visiting him in Manhattan. He replied, "Mom, that week is really busy for us. Pauline has a party with her friends. Maybe some other time." Okay. I had gotten used to hearing no, but that time, it felt like I was being pushed aside, like a piece of the past David no longer wanted to talk about. And I found myself wondering, when did the love in my son's eyes get replaced with embarrassment? My car turned onto the gravel road leading to the wedding estate, an old, cream-colored building with a gray tiled roof and iron gates curved like something out of a fairy tale. I took a deep breath. Today was a special day, and I was the mother of the groom. I would hold my head high, just as I had done for the past 70 years. I adjusted my shawl and touched up my pale red lipstick. The dress I chose was burgundy, simple, yet elegant. I had sewn it myself, a quiet reminder I have never forgotten who I am. I stepped out of the car, still holding the small gift box with the pearl necklace inside. The sunlight hit my eyes, so bright it almost hurt, but the pain did not come from the light. It came from a question that had haunted me the whole drive there. I had dreamed of this day, my son's wedding. So why does my heart feel so heavy? I walked slowly into the main hall, transformed into a fairy tale setting with white flowers, scented candles, and a string quartet playing soft music. Everything was perfect, from the lace tablecloths to the sparkling crystal glasses. I used to dream of a wedding like this for David, but for some reason, I still felt out of place. No one noticed me as I entered, not a single glance, not a word of welcome. I stood there, alone, in the middle of all the cheerful chatter. I told myself, maybe they are busy, maybe I arrived a bit too early. I looked around, then quietly found a seat near the corner of the room, a chair by the wall that looked out to the backyard, the same yard where David used to play for hours with just a rubber ball when he was 7 years old. Back then, all it took to make him happy was me standing there, cheering him on. Now, I sat here like a stranger. I placed the little gift box on my lap, my hands gently gripping it. I wanted to find a moment to give it to David, but I was afraid. He would not understand. Or worse, he would refuse it. Part of me was scared, but deep down, I knew in my heart that maybe this necklace no longer had a place in his new life. Suddenly, a familiar laugh echoed through the room. I turned my head. David, my son, in a black tuxedo, walked in looking slightly nervous but undeniably handsome. His face was glowing brighter than ever. I wanted to stand up and hug him, to say, "My son, you look wonderful today." But I held back. I waited for him to notice me. His eyes scanned the room, then landed on me. But instead of smiling, he hesitated, then quickly turned toward a group of friends calling him over. Not a word, not even a nod. My heart dropped like a snapped string on a violin. I sat there a while longer until a young woman approached. A staff member. She smiled politely. "You are the groom's mother, right?" I nodded, trying to return her smile. "Yes, I am Margaret. I am so sorry. But I was told, if you would like a place to rest, there's a private room for family on the second floor. It is going to be a little crowded down here, and Pauline wanted a more comfortable space for her friends." I stood still. A part of me wanted to ask, "She does not want me down here, does she?" But I just nodded, tucked the gift box back into my purse, and slowly walked up the stairs. The family room was lovely, but cold. A small tea table, a large mirror, and a sofa facing the window. No flowers, no wedding photos, nothing to show that this was the room of a mother on her son's wedding day. I sat down, feeling like I had been pushed to the edge of my own son's life. I looked down at the gift box. A storm of emotions swelled inside me. I remembered an old memory, the time I threw David his 13th birthday party. I only had $400 in my bank account, but I sewed each tablecloth by hand, cooked all the food myself, and even hired a clown to perform. After the party, David hugged me, his eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you. Mom, you are the best person in the world. I used to be his whole world. And now I was just a detail that needed to be managed, so I would not ruin the atmosphere of the event. I took the necklace out of the box and placed it in the palm of my hand. The pearls shimmered in the golden light streaming through the window. I touched each one gently, each pearl a piece of memory, a mark of sacrifice. I whispered, "I am sorry. Mom, I did everything you taught me, but somehow I think I have lost my son." A knock came at the door. I quickly wiped my tears. David walked in. His face showed a bit of discomfort, like he had been sent by Pauline to check if Mom is okay. "Mom?" He hesitated. "Do you need anything?" I looked him in the eye, softly. "No, I am fine, just remembering a few things." He nodded, eyes not daring to linger. Then suddenly, I reached out and placed the small box in his hand. "This," I said, my voice low, "is all I have left from your grandmother. I thought you should have it." David opened the lid, looked at the necklace, and said nothing. The silence stretched. Heavy. "Pauline cannot wear this style," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She is allergic to pearls." I nodded. No blame, no anger, just understanding. David left, leaving me alone with my thoughts. But I never imagined there would come a day when I would be shut out of my own son's wedding. I stepped out of the family room, clutching the purse that held the wedding gift. In my heart, I still carried a flicker of hope. Maybe David was just nervous. Maybe Pauline was simply stressed from organizing the big day. Maybe I could still give him the necklace, still hold him close and say, "I am proud of you." As I descended the stairs, everything below sparkled with overwhelming grandeur. The reception hall was decorated with pure white roses suspended from the ceiling, and the crystal chandeliers glowed like stars. Soft music floated from the string quartet in the far corner. Guests were beginning to arrive, dressed in designer gowns and tailored suits. People laughed, toasted champagne, and posed for photos beneath the shimmering flower arch. I smiled, taking steady steps toward the center of the hall, where I saw David standing with a few relatives. I had barely opened my mouth to call him when his eyes met mine. And just like that, the glow on his face faded. David leaned over and said something to Pauline, who was standing just a few feet away. She glanced at me, her brow furrowed. Then she quickly stepped forward. "David, you tell your mother," Pauline snapped, not bothering to lower her voice. A few nearby guests turned their heads. I stopped in my tracks. "That dress looks like something from a flea market," Pauline continued, eyes locked on me. "She is going to make this whole party look ridiculous with that country getup and those sewing stories. I cannot let my friends see this." I stood frozen. The air around me felt like it had been sucked out of the room. David stepped forward, his gaze avoiding mine. "Mom," he spoke quietly, almost in a whisper, but each word cut into me like a blade. "Pauline is right. Could you go home? I will explain later." I took a step back, as if I had just been slapped. My hand loosened, and the little box slipped from my fingers, falling onto the marble floor with a sharp, hollow sound. Everything seemed to freeze in that moment. I bent down to pick it up, but a small hand reached it first. Emma, my niece, the daughter of a distant sister-in-law, just 16 years old. She always called me Miss Margaret, even though we were not directly related by blood. "Ma'am," Emma looked up at me, her voice shaking with anger. They are being awful. You deserve better than this." I gently squeezed her hand, forcing a smile. "It is all right, sweetheart. I am okay." But my heart had already shattered the moment David turned away without a word in my defense. Pauline crossed her arms, glancing around the room, then looked back at David. "We need to get her out of here before my friends show up. I'm not going to be embarrassed by some rural mother-in-law." There was a soft laugh from a group of women nearby, Pauline's friends. One of them whispered, loud enough for me to hear, "Oh, so she is the groom's mom. I thought she was a lost housekeeper. I wanted to vanish, not out of shame, but because I realized, in my own son's eyes, I had become an inconvenience. I took a deep breath. "David," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I did not come here to embarrass anyone. I just wanted to celebrate with you." I looked at him for a long moment. "So, you really have grown up." Emma stood beside me, eyes red. "Miss Margaret, you cannot let them treat you like this." I gently patted her hand. "They can take everything, but there is one thing they can never touch." "What is that?" I smiled. "My dignity." I turned and walked out of the reception hall, but this time, I did not bow my head. No one followed. No one called my name. I passed the white roses, the sound of laughter, the flashes of cameras capturing every moment of the big day. And then I opened the door and stepped outside. The late afternoon sun hit my face, illuminating the tears that rolled silently down my cheeks. I stood at the top of the steps. A gentle breeze swept through, lifting the hem of the dress I had sewn myself. The same dress Pauline called flea market trash, the dress I had once worn with pride, because it was a symbol of my life, simple, yet dignified. I do not remember how I drove myself home. My hands gripped the steering wheel like if I let go, I might fall into the dark pit of my own heartbreak. That day, Savannah looked strangely beautiful. The tree-lined streets, the late afternoon sun casting golden light on the cobblestone roads. Everything looked the same, only my heart had changed. When I got home, I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the white painted wooden door that had been with me for 3 decades. I used to imagine that door opening on David's wedding day, opening to flowers, laughter, and the bride's white dress. But now, it was just a 70-year-old woman sitting in her car, heartbroken on the most important day of her son's life. I opened my purse and took out the small box. The necklace was still inside, untouched, not a single scratch. No one wanted it. No one needed it. I suddenly laughed, a dry, crooked laugh that barely sounded human. All these years, I gave everything to David without hesitation. I worked late into the night to pay for his education. I skipped breakfast for a week just to buy him his first pair of sneakers. I sold my first store to help him put a down payment on his first apartment. I never asked for anything in return, never once demanded gratitude, and yet today, I was treated like a stain on the perfect picture he and Pauline were trying to paint. I opened the box and placed the necklace in the palm of my hand. "Mom," I whispered, "if you were still alive, what would you say, seeing your grandson reject the gift you sacrificed your life to leave behind?" I did not cry, not at all. Instead, I stood up, walked into the house, hung my purse on the hook by the door, and went straight to my bedroom. Everything inside was still tidy, still in its place, but now it felt like a museum, beautiful, full of memories, and lifeless. I placed the necklace in the jewelry box on my vanity. For the first time in years, I did not lock it, not because I was no longer afraid of losing it, but because there was nothing left to lose. That night, I did not eat dinner. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker through the oak tree out front. A part of me wished I could fall asleep and never wake up, and then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emma, "Miss Margaret. I made it home safe. I love you so much. Please do not be sad. If I were your daughter, I would never walk away from you like that." I stared at the message, my heart tightening. If a 16-year-old girl could understand love and gratitude, then why could my own son not? I do not know anymore. Maybe because I taught him everything, except how to love back the one who loved him most. I sat there for a long time, until my phone buzzed again. This time, it was David. I opened the message. Just one short line. "Did you make it home safely? Sorry if Pauline was a bit harsh. It was an important day. You understand?" I did not reply. Harsh. I was humiliated in public, asked to leave my own son's wedding in front of dozens of people, and he called that a bit harsh. I clenched the phone tightly. No, I would not shed another tear. Not for a man who had forgotten who carried him through a childhood of poverty, who stood in the rain selling handmade clothes, who drove him to his first job interview in a car without air conditioning. I stood up and went into the kitchen. I put on the kettle to make a pot of tea. While the water boiled, I opened the bottom drawer of the kitchen cabinet. There, I kept a folder, documents for the trademark and ownership of the fashion chain Margaret and Lace, which I had spent nearly 30 years building. I had once planned to pass the brand on to David after I was gone. I picked up the folder, and I looked at it like it was a stranger. "No more," I whispered. I looked into the mirror. My face had wrinkles, time, and sorrow, but it also had strength. The kind of strength David, Pauline, and all the sparkle-obsessed people like them would never understand, not through wedding gowns, champagne glasses, or glittering ballrooms. Tomorrow, I would begin a new plan, not to seek revenge, but to remind the world that a mother is not born to be forgotten. I had spent a lifetime lifting others up, yet no one ever asked me, "But what about you, Mom?" The house was hauntingly silent. No clinking dishes, no footsteps, just the ticking of the wall clock counting down to something about to shatter. I sat in my old armchair by the fireplace, in the dim light of the living room. In front of me, a wall filled with photographs. David as a frail little boy on a tricycle. David in his graduation gown. David and Pauline standing in front of the house I helped them buy. I looked at each photo, my heart heavy. Every single one was a piece of my life I had given away without asking for anything in return. And now, all I got back was a cold sentence. "Could you go home?" I got up and walked to the wooden cabinet by the side of the room. I pulled out the third drawer from the top, where I kept all of my personal financial records. I was never one for showing off, but I had always been meticulous. Every transfer to David was recorded: date, reason, amount, and a note. I flipped through the pages. Every time David needed something, I dipped into savings, sold stocks, cut my own expenses. I thought I was supporting my son's future, doing what any mother would do, but now, each line on the paper felt like a cold blade. June 2015, $40,000, MBA tuition for David. Asked me not to tell Pauline. March 2018, $65,000, house down payment. David called at midnight crying, afraid of losing it. October 2020, $15,000. Pauline wanted to remodel the kitchen. David promised to repay after the holidays. I added it all up. $517,000. In 10 years, $500,000. I thought I was helping my son, I whispered, but it turns out I was just an ATM. The phone buzzed. It was Emma, I answered, my voice hoarse. "Hello? Miss Margaret?" Her voice was trembling. "I am sorry to call so late, but I cannot sleep." I sat back down in the armchair. "What is wrong, sweetheart? I do not know if I should say this, but I think you need to know. Today, when I was standing on the stairs to the second floor, I overheard Pauline and two of her friends talking. I went still. She said, after the wedding, she would try to put you in a nursing home because that old woman has too much money and property to be living alone, but I cannot stand having her in the house." I closed my eyes. My heart clenched. Emma continued, her voice cracking, and I could not believe it. David did not argue. He just said, "Yeah, we will deal with it after the wedding. If we do it now, she will go crazy." I gave a bitter laugh. "So I am no longer a mother. I am an asset. Miss Margaret, they do not deserve your love. They do not deserve a single cent from you. I know I am not your biological granddaughter, but I am proud to call you family." I bit my lip, tears silently falling. Not out of pain, but because, for the first time in years, I knew. I had to be clear-eyed. The next morning, I wore a light gray outfit and pinned on the silver brooch my mother had left me. I drove to my lawyer's office, Anna Wallace, a sharp and brilliant woman. We had worked together when I was building the Margaret & Lace fashion brand. Anna looked at me, a hint of concern in her eyes. "Margaret, you look a bit tired." "I look like someone who just got stabbed in the back by her own son," I said, my voice steady. "But I am fine, and I am here to set things right." I pulled out a folder and spread it across her desk. "I want to cancel all wedding contributions for David and Pauline, $200,000, effective immediately." Anna nodded. "I will handle it." "Next," I continued, "I want to update my will, all assets, the brand, properties, investment shares, will go to a scholarship fund named after my mother for young girls in rural areas who want to study fashion design." Anna's eyes widened. "All of it. All of it. David will receive nothing." "Is there a formal reason for disinheriting him?" I pulled out another stack of papers, bank statements and a financial summary. Over the past 10 years, he has taken more than $500,000 from me. Not a cent repaid. Add to that the house I signed over, the car I bought, the MBA tuition I covered. He used my love as a cash machine. That ends now. Anna nodded slowly. "And the house you bought for David and Pauline, it is still under your name." "Correct. I want to reclaim it. Prepare the eviction process after their honeymoon. I will not ruin the wedding. I am not that petty. But after that, I am taking everything back. And the debt. I want it documented," I said. "Draft an official letter stating David owes me a total of $517,000. Include the breakdown. I want it delivered the day he returns from his honeymoon." Anna set down her pen. "Margaret, are you absolutely sure?" I looked her straight in the eye. I used to believe love meant giving unconditionally, but now I understand. Love without respect is just humiliation. I left Anna's office in the late afternoon, feeling as light as I did the first time I set down my basket after a long day selling clothes on the street. But unlike back then, this time, I did not feel tired. I felt alive. On the way home, I stopped by the old bakery on the corner, the one I used to take David to every Sunday after church. I bought a crusty loaf of bread and a small slice of strawberry cream cake. I did not need a reason to celebrate, because today, I was not celebrating anyone else. I was celebrating me. I had been silent too long. I had given too much, and now I was about to take it all back. That night, I wrote a letter by hand. Not an email, not a text, a handwritten letter with careful penmanship, the way my mother had taught me. "David, I once thought you were the brightest part of my life, but you used that very light to burn me. I do not blame you for changing. I blame myself for letting you believe that my love was so unconditional it could be walked over. I will no longer visit your home. I will no longer wait for short phone calls, and I will no longer be the sponsor of you and Pauline's shallow fantasies. You chose a life without me. Now, live with that choice. Mom, Margaret." I placed the letter in an envelope and sealed it. Tomorrow, I would send it along with the debt disclosure and the notice to reclaim the house. Not for revenge, but for closure. 2 days later, I received a message from David. "Mom, I heard something came in the mail from your lawyer. What is it?" I did not reply. "What the hell are you doing? Why are you taking the house?" Still silence. At 3 o'clock, the phone rang. David's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call. An hour later, Pauline called. "I do not know what you think you are doing, but if you are trying to ruin our happiness, I am warning you, you will regret it." I set the phone down on the table and said nothing. I looked out the window and saw the oak tree in the front yard shedding golden leaves, quietly beautiful, needing no applause. That was what I wanted to be, not loud, but never underestimated. That afternoon, I visited Emma. She opened the door with a warm smile. "You really came." I hugged her, and for the first time in days, my heart felt warm again. "I have something I want to ask you," I said once we were seated on the sofa. Emma nodded without hesitation. "Anything." I placed a notebook in front of her. "I am starting a scholarship fund for young girls who come from backgrounds like mine. I need someone young who understands technology to help design the website and write the introduction. Can you help?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Of course I can. I will do my very best. This is such an amazing idea." I smiled. I do not want everything I have built to be wasted on an ungrateful son. I want to leave behind something meaningful. Emma took my hand. "I'm so proud of you. For the first time in weeks, I no longer felt forgotten, no longer felt alone. I felt like I had a new purpose." A week after the wedding, David and Pauline returned from their honeymoon. I imagined their faces when they opened the envelope with the eviction notice, the debt summary, and my handwritten letter. Not because I found joy in their pain, I am not that kind of person, but to remind myself I had lived too long for others. It was time to live for myself. I was not destroying them. I was reclaiming what was mine. One day, David finally left a long voice message. "Mom, I know I was wrong, but is this not too much? Do you really want the world to see me as a freeloader? Pauline is losing her mind. Please, forgive me. I will change." I listened to every word, but I did not respond, not out of hate, but because I knew, if I answered, I would become that woman again, the one who only knew how to give, and I was not that woman anymore. 3 weeks after the wedding, it was a quiet Friday morning, and Savannah was draped in a soft drizzle. I was making tea when the doorbell rang, sharp, urgent, as if the person outside had lost all patience. I already knew who it was. I set the kettle down and calmly walked to the door, and just as I expected, David and Pauline stood on the porch, soaked, but not from the rain, from the panic that was drowning them. Pauline spoke first, her voice like a blade. "What do you think you are doing?" I said nothing. I simply opened the door wider. "If you too want to talk, do it properly." David stepped in first, head bowed. Pauline followed, her high heels clacking harshly against the wooden floor. I led them to the living room and sat down in my usual armchair. They sat across from me. No one invited them to. David spoke, his voice tight. "Mom, are you trying to embarrass me in front of the whole family?" I raised an eyebrow. "Because I am taking back property I paid for." Pauline jumped in. "Property. The stuff you promised to give us. We made plans believing you would keep your word." I let out a quiet, cold laugh. "You speak as if I am a bank with no terms and conditions." Pauline's face flushed. "You know we need the money. Now you are taking the house, making our debt public. Are you even a mother?" I turned to David. "What do you think? Am I a mother? Or just a walking ATM?" David said nothing. He stared at the floor. I said I was sorry. "Why do you have to blow this up?" I paused for a moment. "You still do not understand. This is not about money, it is about respect. I gave you my entire life. And in return, I got. Could you go home now?" "At your wedding." Pauline scoffed. "That was your own fault. Who wears that kind of outdated dress to a wedding?" My heart winced for a second, but I showed nothing. I leaned forward, my eyes sharp. "That dress, I sewed it myself, with the same hands that stitched clothes to raise my son. That dress is history, and you only know how to rent a stylist." Pauline's mouth fell open. I continued, "You think money is power? You are wrong. Respect is power." David looked up. "Mom, I never meant to hurt you. I cut him off. Never meant to. So the plan to send me to a nursing home, that was out of love. Was it?" David's face went pale. Pauline's eyes widened. How did you find out about that?" I stood. My voice was low, each word precise. "I have been silent long enough." I pulled a folder from the drawer and placed it on the table. "This is the full record of what you borrowed from me. $517,000. You signed for it. There are receipts, enough for the court to recognize it." David said nothing. I pointed to a second folder. "This is the eviction notice. The house you are living in. It is still in my name. You and Pauline have 30 days to vacate." Pauline screamed, "You are trying to ruin our lives." I was calm, still as a lake in fall. "No, I am simply correcting what never should have been wrong in the first place." The room fell into silence. David covered his face with his hands. "Mom, if you want an apology, I gave it. What more do you want?" I looked him in the eye. "I want to live without being disrespected." The silence lingered. Then suddenly, Pauline burst into tears. "You cannot do this if we lose that house. I will have to move back in with my parents. They hate me. They will think I am a failure." I replied coldly, "Good. Maybe they should know the truth about you." David held his wife's hand and turned to me. "So what do you want, Mom? Do you want us out of your life for good?" I paused for a moment, then nodded. "Yes." My answer dropped like a blade, final, without mercy. David looked as if the air had been knocked out of him. I walked to the door, opened it. "Now, please leave my home." Pauline jumped up. "You are a snake, old and vicious," I smiled softly. "I am old, yes, but I am no longer naive." David said nothing more. Pauline was crying, angry tears. She tried to keep her makeup from smudging, but the more she wiped, the messier it got, like the messy, fabricated life she was so desperately clinging to. The two of them stood at my doorway, soaked, defeated, and out of options. I left the door cracked open, just a little, and looked at them one last time. "David," I said, my voice low but firm, "I do not hate you, but I no longer love you in the way I once did. You need to learn how to grow without standing on me to do it." He opened his mouth to speak, but said nothing. His eyes dropped, as if he understood. Too late. I closed the door. This time, I did not cry. That night, I sat in my study, the soft golden lamp lighting the papers I had spent days preparing, the scholarship fund documents, the property reclamation forms, the debt claim files. Everything was ready. But then, my eyes landed on an old photo. David, 5 years old, hugging a ragged teddy bear, grinning ear to ear over the birthday cake I had just baked. My heart twinged. I once loved that child so much. I thought I could not live without him. But today, I understood. I could live, and live powerfully, even if he was no longer the person I once knew. The truth is, not every child is meant to be held onto. A week later, I held a small press conference at my old design studio, now transformed into a creative space for young girls supported by the Lace and Legacy Scholarship Fund I had founded. More local journalists came than I expected. I wore a charcoal gray suit, a champagne-colored silk tie, and my hair in a neat bun. No flashy makeup, no grand display. But my eyes were sharp, just like they were the day I stood before a bank board 30 years ago to ask for my first business loan. I stood in the center of the all-white room, holding a microphone. "Good afternoon, everyone. I am Margaret Lane. Some of you may know me as the founder of the fashion chain Margaret and Lace. But today, I am not here to talk about success. I am here to talk about freedom." I shared my story, calmly, without hiding the truth, about raising my son alone, about being cast aside at his wedding, and about how I stood up and took back control of my life. Maybe I was not the perfect mother, but I know one thing: no one deserves to be treated like their love is an obligation. A week later, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter, the handwriting shaky but unmistakable. "Mom, I never knew you were this strong. I know it is too late for an apology, but if one day you are ever able to forgive me, just let me know. I will wait. David." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. No tears, no bitterness, just peace. Not because my son had changed, but because I was no longer bound by hope. I had crossed a threshold most people never dare to face. I no longer lived for validation. I lived to pass on value. I had forgotten that for many long years. I had traded my dignity to hold on to a family bond that had already rotted. But today, I remembered. There were no more sharp voices echoing through my home. No more judgmental eyes when I entered unfamiliar rooms. No more feeling like a stranger in my own son's life. Now, every room in this house is filled with light. Not because Savannah suddenly shines brighter, but because my heart has cleared away shadows that never belonged. I no longer count days. I live in each moment. A month after that final confrontation, I was invited to be the keynote speaker at a seminar titled "Women and Owning Your Life After 60. They asked me if I was afraid, living alone at this age, having just cut ties with my only son. I smiled. I am not living alone. I am living with myself. And that feels more full than any party I was ever uninvited from. The room erupted in applause. An older woman came up to me afterward, gripping my hand, tears in her eyes. I thought I was the only one whose children looked down on her. Now I know sometimes losing a child is how you find yourself. I squeezed her hand, said nothing more than a nod of understanding. Women like us, we do not complain. We just need to know we are not alone anymore. One spring afternoon, Emma and I hosted the first scholarship ceremony for 6 young girls. They stood on the small stage, trembling, holding their name plaques, their eyes shining with emotion. Most of them came from distant rural towns, where fashion design once felt as unreachable as city lights. When I stepped up, I did not give a speech. I simply told them about my mother, her calloused hands, her pearl necklace, and the quiet dignity she left behind. "You do not need to become someone else," I said. "Just be yourselves. But be the version that never bows to injustice." The audience rose in applause, and in their eyes, I saw my mother. I saw myself, at 20, trembling with empty hands, but never letting go of hope. I do not need grandchildren to carry on my bloodline. I have left behind something far more important, a generation of girls who will never let someone else rewrite their story. I'm no longer angry with David. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means knowing you no longer need anger as your companion. I have chosen peace. And if one day David knocks with a truly repentant heart, I will open the door, not to return to the past, but to show him a new path, if he truly wants to walk it. And Pauline, I heard she is living temporarily with her parents. The house has been reclaimed. I do not feel triumphant, just relieved. That woman once said I embarrassed them. But now, she is the one who must bow her head to what I built, not with money alone, but with character. One late afternoon, I sat on the porch sipping tea, jasmine petals fluttering to the steps in the soft breeze. Emma sat beside me, drafting the introduction for the scholarship website. "You know," she said, "I used to think growing old was scary, but watching you, it feels like an accomplishment." I smiled. Aging is not the enemy. It is a mirror. It shows us how we have lived, and if we are brave enough to look, it is a gift. She nodded. "I hope one day. I will have your strength." I turned to her and held her hand. "You do not have to wait for someday." You already have it. Just believe you are worthy. The sunset painted the sky in deep orange. I closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I was not thinking about what I had lost, not mourning what would never return. I was thinking only of one thing. I have weathered the storm, and I am still myself.